What is happening, everybody? How is it going? Thank you again for joining us for another FKN panel. And at first, I want to wish everybody a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, or a Happy Yule, or Saturnalia, Lupercalia, whatever you are celebrating at this point in time. This will be playing during my 2 weeks off. So I wanted to leave you guys with something to watch for a little holiday special. But nonetheless, let's bring the crew on. Of course, we have Miss Karen Holton from Karen Holton TV, Quantum Guides, and Aliens and Angels podcast. How's it going, Karen?
It's going real good, Stephen. Thanks so much for having us on again.
Of course, anytime. And then we have the Commander-in-Chief of FKN and his lady. We have Mr. Chris Mathieu and Jennifer Halcame. What is going on, guys?
Hello, howdy.
Hi, Stephen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, guys. Good to see you.
Ready to get weird, baby.
Ready to get weird. All right. So on the docket for this month, we have the occult and the pagan origins of Christmas. I think this is a familiar rabbit hole. A lot of us have gone down in our, not just, our spiritual evolutions, but our evolution of truth within ourselves, or our truth. And, we come to find that a lot of the holidays that American society celebrates have a lot of very interesting pagan and occult origins. And these seem to fly by the wayside from the consensual population. They don't really look into it this much or understand it. But, we all know that this does carry a importance, a symbolic energy. I mean, I'm sure all of you here have heard of the magic, quote unquote, of Christmas. So there's most certainly a very interesting energy that permeates our collective at this time. It has some very deep ancient roots in human antiquity. So let's start off with Karen. Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you know about the occult and the pagan origins of this holiday?
Basically, from the research I've done, the whole thing is pagan and occult. And people say, oh, you need to put the Christ back in Christmas, And yet, besides the word Christmas, which is Christ Mass, which the Catholic Church calls its Sunday or festive worship days, masses, instead of services. So it's Christ's Mass at Christmas time. But actually, that is because the early church, about 500 years after Christ, maybe 300, I'm not sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, there was the Council of Nicaea, and they got together and they decided what the new religion would be like, which is what the Catholic Church stemmed from. So long story short, what they did, since they couldn't stop people from their celebrations that had been going on for probably thousands of years, they incorporated it into the church and renamed it. So, for instance, Easter, which is totally pagan, that was now the death and resurrection of Christ. Christmas was now the birth of Jesus. And I got more to say, but I'll zip it and save it for all of you after y'all get a chance to talk, because I could go on and on about it.
Stephen, I think you're muted, but
thanks for the heads up, Karen. I understand that. No worries. But Chris, Jen, let's hear a little bit about what you guys know about the pagan and occult origins of Christmas. And I know Chris has a little story he said that he wanted to share as well, which I'm definitely interested to hear about.
Okay, well, as I told you both earlier, I'm mainly here just to look pretty for everyone. I haven't really studied this much. I know a lot about a lot of stuff, but I am a master of no topic. But I did pull up a little fun tidbit that may be part of our ancient Christmas roots that does have pagan ties as well. And as you both know, it is so difficult to sift through anything from our history to tell what's accurate and what's not. And we all know that Christmas is a mismatch of many different ancient practices, as well as the commercialized aspects that our modern society has melded into it. But this is just a little fun historical possibility. Some historians argue that Santa Claus is actually a magic mushroom shaman, and it's indicated by his red and white outfit. It resembles the psychedelic Amanita muscaria mushroom. The fungus is bright red as Rudolph's nose, and white sprinkled with white flecks of snow. This evidence brings scholars to subscribe to the theory that numerous Christmas traditions spawned from pagan psychedelic rituals. For the reindeer, the mushrooms were a delightful treat, and they seemed to experience some kind of intoxicating effect from ingesting them. When the reindeer got buzzed, they behaved drunkenly. They pranced around, and for someone who may have taken magic mushrooms themselves and observed this, they may appear to be flying. And in fact, the ancients were even known to drink the urine of the reindeer that had eaten the mushroom just to get that little extra kick, I guess. I don't know. The Sami people of Lapland, who hail from northern Finland, not far from the North Pole, they centered both reindeer and mushrooms in their culture. The semi religious leaders, called shamans, would act as mediators between this world and the spirit world, and they are said to travel by reindeer and visit homes during the winter solstice to perform healing rituals with the psychedelic mushrooms. The shamans were even known to dress in red and white robes with hats, and during the winter, many of the doorways would be snowed in, leaving the only way for the shamans to enter would be to go down the chimney. So, like I said, I don't know how accurate any of this is, but it is a fun little tidbit to add to our show tonight for sure. Yeah.
Oh, most certainly. I would agree with that. And that is very interesting. We're definitely going to have to dive into that. Jen, let's hear from you.
Oh, well, throughout the years, I've studied just a little bit on this. It just about all of our Christmas traditions do stem from pagan holidays, and their traditions. I'm with Stephen. I don't think most people in the general public have any idea. Generally, what I see are people are pretty stunned to find out that what they've been doing are pagan rituals. So we'll save a lot of it for later, but for now we have things like the Christmas tree, lighting candles in the evergreens, beckoning back the sun. We have things like, how they stole winter solstice and Yule holidays to celebrate a birthday of someone they have no idea when they were born. And yeah, just about all of the Christian church holidays are coming from the pagan rituals.
It is. It's interesting. It's one of the biggest things that I always find so profoundly fascinating is how we look at America and a lot of its facets and its foundation is built off of a lot of this occult symbolism and this pagan symbolism, and it has come through in the holidays. I've done a little bit of research here on this as well. I am by no means an expert on the topic. However, I do know how the powers that were love to use anagrams with certain things. And when we look at the word Santa, yes, we have two potential things it could be an anagram for. We see Saturn or we potentially see Satan, and it's possible. But the number one thing why Saturn always resonates with me, because we look back to Saturnalia. which was a holiday that was back, as Karen was saying, it was celebrated in Roman times during the winter solstice. They would get really ridiculous. Actually, I think Dionysius was the god they looked at during Saturnalia, if I'm correct. But I mean, it was basically a festival of feasting and debauchery before Lent. And then that even kind of ties in Lent itself almost being a pagan thing too, this fasting that occurs after the specific holiday. But no, I think really what's very interesting about this is how they always somehow, some way manage to fit this occult symbolism into the society. And especially in this case, we're talking about with kids, okay, well, what's Christmas time to children, right? I mean, they have Santa Claus, the magic of Christmas that we talk about. I mean, we even look at elves too. I mean, like, definitely some interesting pagan symbolism. Karen, do you have any experiences with the pagan, I guess you could say the pagan aspects of Christmas? Like, has that ever come out to you during any of your holiday experiences? And do you also feel that there's potentially some kind of magic that surrounds this holiday that could potentially be, I guess, rooted in our ancient antiquity and in our collective consciousness from way old times?
Well, yes, actually. The way I learn is through immersive learning. So, for instance, most of you know, I spent 17 years of my adult life as a Jehovah's Witness. And then when I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore and I quit. Then I immersed myself in all the things that I was told were evil and bad. So that included me getting involved with pagans and actually going to witch school for a couple of months and learning everything I could about magic. Now, this is amazing. I was in the Comox Valley and they take the solstice very seriously there. And every winter solstice, we would gather in this huge field. And to get from the parking lot to the field, there would be pathways through the woods. And they would have candles in paper bags that lined, every, I don't know, 10 or 20 feet line the paths. And then when you got out into this open field, there was a massive bonfire that they had already constructed and had burning just like sky high, like 12 feet high flames. It was so amazing. And in the Comox Valley, which is on Vancouver Island, the winters are fairly mild, not like where I live now in Alberta. But so we would form a huge circle around this bonfire. And some people would wear costumes and have different kind of noisemakers and different kinds of shamanic things. And we would sing pagan chants and march around around this bonfire. And it was the most amazing experience. But what was really amazing, which I learned from going to witch school, but also going to Samhain or a Samhain, I forget how it's pronounced exactly, which is the real Halloween, and the winter solstice and other celebrations, is you can feel the energy. There is a actual energy that's generated by the chanting and the movements, and everybody without any alcohol or drugs would get high as kites off of this intense energy, to the point where you couldn't even sleep that night. And I can really relate to the ancient pagans doing this at solstice time. What a wonderful, wonderful time of year.
I would agree, and what you said too, I mean, even that ties into how moving our physical body actually, works with our energy and our subtle bodies. So it doesn't surprise me that all of this, this chanting and this movement and this dancing really like catapulted you into this heightened state of consciousness. And
Absolutely.
And then what you're even saying too, the energy, there is some kind of energy around this time of year. I can't explain it, but definitely. I do want to touch on one thing Jen did post on Facebook. she did post something about the pagan holidays of Christmas. And I stated that if we were really celebrating the birth of Christ at Christmas, we would be eating fish and bread, and we would have a manger set up in our living room as opposed to a Christmas tree. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there, because yes, I've actually seen something like that. But Chris, tell me, in your history of studying the paranormal and doing your consciousness exploration, aside from the shaman Santa story, which is really cool, but have you experienced anything like in terms of strange experiences or high strangeness around Christmas time, even in like your own personal life?
I don't think I have. Last Christmas was probably the most spiritually aware that I've been during Christmas. I was actually having my mushroom experiences during that time. That was kind of towards the tail end of the experiences, and it was a very trying period. I was going through a dark night of the soul at the time. Lots of things were happening, but it was also like the best Christmas of my life. And for my entire life, I can remember, having Christmas associated with Christianity, specifically Catholicism. I grew up in a Catholic home, and we would go to mass every Christmas Eve. But then we would go home that evening, and it's like the Christian aspect would fly out the window. There'd be drinking, there would be people passing around presents, giving, it was a fun time. Don't get me wrong. I loved Christmases. The energy of the family was always beautiful. But the Americanized modern Christmas, it has nothing to do with anything, any Christianity at all. It's a commercialized holiday that's a mismatch of different ancient practices and aspects thrown together, but lost throughout history. The real meaning has been lost. And it's like that, the game of telephone that we've changed all the most important parts of, and now we just focus on spending money and drinking, partying, and the real aspect of what Christmas is truly supposed to be about is lost. But for me, after growing up and my whole life, Christmas has been one of my favorite holidays, not because I got presents, not because of the commercialization or any of the fake BS that comes out of there, but how it brings people together, how it brings family together, and the happiness that you can see from giving up to a person and making them happy. And it's not even about the money you spend or anything. It's just about seeing the happiness that you can bring to a person just by knowing that you thought about them during this time. And I think that's what it was always about for me, still is. And I would hope that for most people, that's what it's still about, and that hasn't at least been lost. But that's my little 2 cents about it. Jen?
I dig it, man. I dig it. No, I mean, and I'm with you. I think, here, and I actually brought this up in my show last week. In the West, we have not people like you and I and us sitting here, don't get me wrong, but if we're talking about the consensual population that take part in that reality, it's very materialistic. It's very material driven. I mean, it's sometimes in a lot of ways about the biggest and best gifts, or the most flashy thing you can do. In reality, though, I'm with you, Chris. I think it's about family, and I think that's where a lot of that true power and that true magic comes from, is love around that time of year. As a lot of us have come to find sitting here, love is not just an emotion, but it itself is a force as well. It itself is a magic, and that magic can do some very interesting things. And really, let's kind of do this real quick, if you guys don't mind. The winter solstice. Let's look at the spiritual meaning of the winter solstice real quick, because I think this kind of ties into kind of the true meanings of this holiday, aside from spending time with family. So we have the winter solstice holds a significant spiritual meaning as a time of reflection, renewal, and the symbolic triumph of light over darkness. I think a lot of us can resonate with that feeling. How about you, Jennifer? Have you ever had yourself a very interesting experience around this time of the year? Especially being as energetically talented as you are, I'm definitely interested to hear what you have experienced.
Oh, well, winter solstice is one of my favorite holidays, if I'm being honest about it. I did grow up in a Christian household and we celebrated Christmas. And it really was about the love in the family. But as an adult, I have celebrated winter solstice. Um, every year is magical. Every year we raise the energy to bring the light back. We do beckoning trees. My kids come over for a big feast, and it's I agree with both of you. It's the love that brings the magic, I feel. Um, and I think that's what helps get us through those darkest nights of the year, uh, is the hope that the light will come back. And that is what we try to do, is bring the light back that time of year.
I think that's awesome. And really when we look at that meaning, how it is, a time of reflection, renewal, and the symbolic triumph of light over darkness, it's such a spiritual meaning, when we look at it really deeply, because not only do we see that playing out into our own internal worlds, we also see that playing in our external experience as well. We see almost this. It even goes back to the days of, what was it, Horus and Set. During the sun, when the sun would rise, Horus would win the battle, and then when the sun set, Set would win the battle. And that the times of dawn and dusk were the peak of this battle. And it's very interesting. I'd like to see this meaning brought back to Christmas. Like, I think, bringing back this spiritual side to Christmas would be an awesome thing, and maybe we can start facilitating that. Karen, what are some of your, now this is something I wanted to ask you guys in particular, because I know we all kind of do Christmas a little bit differently. What are some of your favorite spiritual traditions that you do around this time, if there is some, that kind of help you triumph over that darkness and to celebrate this renewal and this reflection that this time brings?
I have to say it's the bringing back of the light. So this is the darkest time of year where I live. The sun doesn't come up until nearly 9 o'clock in the morning, and it's gone about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So the nights are very, very long. I want to contrast that a bit with what I said earlier, where people say, put the Christ back in Christmas. Well, Christ actually never was in Christmas. Again, for another reason, is Bethlehem and that part of the Middle East, the weather's very much like here, like in northern United States and Canada. It's cold. There's no way shepherds are out in the fields with their flock in wintertime. Never going to happen. They'd all die. So really the latest it could have been was around, maybe October, probably September, when Jesus was born. But what happened was, as I mentioned before, the early church, they had the birth of the sun, which was the pagan solstice rituals around bringing back the sun. And that was with the Druids and with the Romans and all kinds of other cultures, like I said, for thousands of years. So likewise to me, I get excited this time of year because I know that it's only a week or two until the sun starts staying longer and the days start to warm up. And I get a thrill and excitement as we kind of go to that. There's about a 3-day period around the solstice where the sun seems to disappear for most of the, well, all of the night. And well, of course, it's up a bit in the daytime, but it's quite low to the horizon and we're waiting for it to come back. So that's the part that gets me really excited. So I have cats, so I can't have actual fire candles because they won't leave them alone and I don't want to burn the house down. So I use electric candles, but I use a lot of small Christmas lights. And of course, I have all kinds of greenery and ornaments and decorate everything so it looks so cute and so warm and cozy inside the house. And so I put on all of those lights um, to keep me company, in the afternoons, into the evenings or early mornings. I just love it. So I can sit with my coffee or my cup of tea and just enjoy the ambiance. So I definitely have all kinds of, although they're electric, I have all kinds of candles all over the place. And it's very beautiful and it makes me feel so warm and cozy and reminds me that it's just like a very short period of time until the days start to get longer. And that's always exciting for me.
That's really cool. And I think really you picked up a really good point of this holiday, and even kind of tapping into its occult origins a little bit by what you just did there. And the reason being is like you created this environment. It's almost like you even created this ritual space that you do at this time of year to kind of like bring forth that energy into your hearth and home. I think that is super cool. And I think really that's a big point of what we do need to bring back and stop focusing on the materialism also. But kind of tying in, I want to bring this up real quick if you guys don't mind. How many of you all have heard of Krampus? Yes, exactly. So according to, I guess you could say, popular lore, this was actually a predecessor to Santa Claus himself. You know, it could have been Saturn, it could have been Satan, or it could have been this thing. So I'm going to bring this up really quickly here. And I think I've always thought Krampus was really interesting, but nonetheless, we have Krampus. He's a horned anthropomorphic figure who in the central and eastern alpine folklore tradition is said to accompany St. Nicholas on visits to children during the night of the 5 December. So it's called Krampus Night or Krampusnacht, immediately before the feast of St. Nicholas on the 6th of December. St. Nicholas rewards well-behaved children with small gifts, while Krampus punishes badly behaved ones with birch rods. Man, I'm glad I wasn't a kid in old Germany, man. Because if all the misbehaving I did when I was young. But
have you seen the Krampus parades, man? Those are something else.
No, I have not seen the Krampus. I've heard many different, I guess you could say, versions of the Krampus story. I've heard he would leave like messed up things in your shoe or whatever it was. But I guess this one is
Gonna poop in your shoe.
I'm telling you, man. It's like, but it's interesting. It always, again, one of the biggest things about Christmas, even we could see back then, is it kind of, we're going to get into the darker side of it a little bit, but, it kind of does things to kids. I mean, you look at the Krampus story right there. I mean, like that's traumatizing for a child. I mean, could that be a form of loosh harvesting or something like that? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. It's a little weird. I mean, when you were a kid too, man, they said if you don't behave, Santa's going to bring you a lump of coal or you're not going to get any presents. So we can see, as Chris put it, the telephone game that kind of played. But do you think, man, like there's Chris, do you think there's potentially a dark side to this in a lot of ways? I mean, it could be. I mean, we look at a lot of the occult aspects of our society and there is a dark side there. So I'm just curious on your thoughts about it.
Well, yeah, I think there's a dark side to everything, but it's really your perspective, the way you personally look at things. And of course, you could think of the commercialized layer of deception that surrounds Christmas and say that that's dark and evil. And what does that cause for the collective consciousness every year when it comes around, especially people that are participating for the wrong reasons? But overall, I don't think that it's dark in nature. I think that it has been used for some dark purposes, for very powerful people, and manipulated by corporations and things of that nature. But once you get down to people's individual lives, it's usually a pretty beautiful thing overall. Although I don't know how I feel about lying to children about this fictional character that comes and brings them presents and is able to go across the world in one evening, all these magical things. Hey, maybe he did eat those magical mushrooms to do that. But my experience with Santa was great until I found out he didn't exist. And I was kind of traumatized over the whole thing. I was still rather young when I found out. And I opened a closet that I wasn't supposed to be in upstairs, and boom, everything I'd asked for in one shelf, still in the box with like a receipt there and everything. And I'm like, wait a second. So I can see how that can be, traumatizing for kids, depending on how they play the whole Santa Claus thing. But I don't know. What do you think, Jen?
Well, I've raised kids, and with my oldest, I decided to do St. Nicholas, just because I felt like it was, when did Jesus become a salesman? So I never did like that. But with my youngest, his older siblings begged me, please, Connor needs the magic of Santa Claus. He needs the magic of Christmas. And finally I gave in and I said, okay, well, with my youngest, we decided to do Santa Claus, but I refused to do the whole naughty or nice thing. I said, my kids will do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because they're going to get something out of it. I always thought that was kind of messed up, but yeah, you lie to them for what, 8, 9 years, if you're lucky, until some friend at school tells them Santa's not real. And then they don't trust you. And then they find out the Easter Bunny isn't real, and they don't trust you because you've lied to them all these years. So I'm not a big fan personally.
Man, I have to say, I remember one year I even saw my dad in the final stages of putting on a Santa Claus outfit. And I was like, I made myself in denial. I was like, nah, he's just in my parents' room changing. It's Santa in my parents' room changing. That's all. So just had to throw that in there.
Man, I'll tell you what. No, I'm in agreement with you on that. I'll never forget how I found out Santa wasn't real. It's a quick story, but I remember I was about 8 or 9 years old. And, everybody tells you, Santa comes at midnight. That's when he drops down your chimney. And like, even at 8 or 9 years old, I was like, man, this dude is talented. He drops down how many chimneys all over the world at midnight? This guy is nuts. And then so I, curious me, decided to be like, all right, I'm going to wait up and I'm going to call his bluff. So like, I'm sitting there in my room and it turns to midnight and I'm like, all right, cool. Let's go scope the scene out. And I remember I'm going down the stairs and I peek around the corner and I see my mom, my father, and my grandmother all wrapping the gifts that Santa Claus was supposed to be getting for me. So I was like, okay. I was like, I don't know if I had a feeling, but nonetheless, let's real quick before we hop back to Karen, because I wanted to ask her what her thoughts are on potentially a dark element to Christmas. We have Saint Nick here. We're going to bring up real quick. And this is who Jen worked with when she was doing Christmas for her oldest son. And, we have St. Nicholas is a legendary figure in European folklore based on the Greek early Christian bishop Nicholas of Myra, the patron saint of children. On St. Nicholas Day, children wait for St. Nicholas to come and put a present under their pillow or in a boot or on their windowsill, provided that the children were good during the year. Children who behaved badly may expect to find a twig or a piece of coal under their pillows. In the Netherlands, see Sinterklaas. Dutch children put out a shoe filled with hay and a carrot for St. Nicholas's horse. See, if I had known a horse was involved in this the whole time, I probably would have left out some carrots and some hay. But actually, before we hop to Karen, I'm going to bring this up in my question to you, Karen. Who thinks that potentially Christmas could have its own egregore? Like, we talked about, the magic that Christmas has, or this time of the year potentially has. And a lot of that could definitely stem from love. I do think that as well. But there's also the potential, we as the collective, we create these egregore beings, these ideas, and they begin to take on a life of their own and almost a consciousness of their own. And it could be akin to a spirit, or a human created spirit almost. So, Karen, do you not only think that Christmas could have a potential dark side to it, and it's not, all dark, but everything has its polarity if we're looking at it that way. And do you think that potentially Christmas has its own egregore, and could this egregore could have potentially originated from the occult side of things and gained momentum through the more modern side of it?
Well, this is just my opinion, but I actually believe that the old pagan ways of celebrating this time of year was uh, in natural harmony with us as being beings that are indigenous to this planet. So our circadian rhythms are very dependent on moon phases and how much sun we get. And I think that that was a very natural way to be. And I don't think it was an egregore. I think the egregore came from what I'm going to call the construct, which is the false matrix that we live in. We think this is real life. It's not. It's all bullshit. History, politics, going out on a limb, going to say a lot of religions, not saying all, but some. And I think, and especially since the early 1900s, when it really ramped up to be a commercial time of year, where it was all about kind of greed and money and being good for the wrong reasons and all that other stuff, then I think it developed an egregore, which is very commercial oriented. But another part of this, that I know this is going to be very unpopular, but it is just my feeling. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I think that there's even a part in the modern celebration of Christmas that's a bit of child grooming, because to have your kid go and sit on a strange man's lap and tell him everything that you want and trust and love him when there's no basis of safety there, I see it actually as a bit of a grooming thing that may lead some children to be susceptible to well, let's just say perverts, for lack of a better term. And a lot of children don't have fathers anymore. Lots and lots of children don't have fathers anymore. They're really craving that male energy. And then, to get little Billy to go and sit on the stranger's lap, to me, it's just weird. I'm sorry. I don't know why, but that is what comes up for me. So I just wanted to say it.
No, I completely understand. Sorry, my internet went down there for a little bit to everybody who's watching, but it is back up and running. But we got everything you said, Karen. But no, that is very interesting to me. That there could potentially be a grooming aspect to it. I mean, it is very strange. You take your kid to the mall, and he sits on a lap of an old man dressed up as Santa. The lap is just a weird place to sit if it's not your kid or something like that, So no,
And
I'm with you.
and a lot of the Santas don't look that different than homeless guys. And I'm not saying homeless guys are perverts, but I'm just
Seriously,
saying.
go take a look at your local mall Santa and let me know how long you want to let your kid sit on that lap.
I'm with
Yeah.
It's true though. No, I'm in agreement. I think that's a weird thing, and that's good that you brought that up, Karen, because I think that's a little bit too, because I remember when I was a kid, my parents it took me to do that, and I thought it was weird the whole time. I was like, why am I gonna go sit on this dude's lap and laugh and tell them everything I want for Christmas. And I mean, like, you know, of course you go through it and you know, you think that's part of the thing at that time. And but no, it's definitely strange. But one thing I want to bring up real quick because it was profoundly fascinating, Chris's Amanita muscaria story. I actually have something I pulled up here we can take a look at on this because you know, I've done my research on quite a few things, and you know, I know in early Christianity we have a lot of potential psychedelic mushroom use. I mean, there was this couple that was traveling the old Gothic cathedrals in Europe, and they came across this cathedral in France where they found out the Last Supper was a supper of mushrooms. And Jesus and his disciples all had a mushroom feast for the Last Supper. And I was like, man, that must have been a really interesting Last Supper, man. That had to have been one hell of an interesting experience. But here we have Mushroom Santa, the strange correlation between Christmas tradition and Amanita mushrooms. I'm very interested to read a little bit about this. So we have Santa's main thing may be joy and merriment, but he's no stranger to controversy either. Let's explore the strange correlation between magical mushrooms and Santa Claus. That is a cool little picture right there. Santa is having a good holiday. What, you know, maybe we should start a new tradition. Maybe we should leave leave a little bit of mushroom tea out for Santa on Christmas Eve night, and maybe he'll like that a little bit more than the cookies. Who knows? But you know, let's take.
He probably wouldn't make it back up the chimney. You'd find him the next morning rolling around on your floor.
You would find him like sitting in your living room meditating or something like that. You come out and he's just sitting there. Oh my goodness, man. But you know, it's cold outside around the end of December and fresh snow is just falling as you sit there by the fire, a peaceful night with your family. As you're sitting there, a jolly person in a red and white coat descends through your chimney. And after entering, they begin giving out brightly colored presents, and upon receiving them, you experience overwhelming sensations of merriment, joy, and camaraderie with your family. That's because these colorful gifts are dried fly agaric Amanita muscaria mushrooms, and the person handing them out was a Siberian shaman performing their duties on the winter solstice. So why does it sound so much like our current old tale of Old Saint Nick? And this article just goes in. I'll leave the link for you guys at the bottom of the description of this video when it drops. But if you want to take a look at this article for yourselves, feel free. But man, I mean, you look at that photo of Santa holding the Amanita muscaria mushroom, and it's like, yeah, like I could definitely see this. I could potentially see this. I mean, you know, it wouldn't surprise me though that this was potentially in its origins a psychedelic holiday also. I mean, you know, we look at a lot of the pagan rituals from back in the day, and a lot of them did involve psychedelic plants. And you know, I mean, do you guys overall as a consensus, we'll start with Chris and Jen because we just hopped from Karen. Do you feel that a lot of our holidays could potentially too be psychedelically oriented?
I think most spiritual practices, period, are based and originated from a lot of psychedelic contact and experiences. There's no way for me to prove that. There's no real evidence, but based on some of the historical texts, based on some things that we can look at, there is a lot of evidence for this. We do know that in ancient Egyptian and other practices, there's definitely use of psychedelics in their spiritual practices, in the pagan practices as well. So why wouldn't, you know, this holiday be any different than any other origination of these stories that may have been from shamanic practices? And I think that a lot of, you know, even Christianity may have a lot of its base with shamanic experiences. So yeah, I'm definitely think that, you know, a lot of this stuff is based on psychedelics. What do you think, Jim?
I have to agree. I mean, come on, we've got flying reindeer and a man that comes down everybody's chimney on one night. How can we not have mushrooms on this?
I'm with you guys, man. It's you know, it's very fascinating to me. But see, I'm also kind of in a very interesting boat. I kind of agree with Karen a lot too. You know, like this is something, because you know we have that aspect of us that, you know, we want to look at this history, you know, of a lot of these different, not only just spiritual traditions, but you know, just look at the evolution of humanity and where we've come from, our different steps we've taken to get to where we are today. But then, you know, kind of in the same boat with Karen, I've come to see that a lot of our history too could be fabricated. So it makes you wonder, like, let's entertain that for a little bit. What could the potential underlying purpose of Christmas be then, if we'd be dealing with something like that? I mean, to me, it's just fascinating. But Karen, do you think that a lot of what we know about Christmas, as far as the history side of it, do you think that there could potentially be more than to it than what meets the eye? Because I'm kind of in agreement with you on the fact that some of our history has most certainly been doctored.
Yeah, certainly. So, for instance, I think magic is a real thing. And I think that magic is tied in with being connected with the planet, to the seasons, circadian rhythms, seasons, foods that are available, including mushrooms. You know, and I think that that aspect of true spirituality, apart from the man-made religions within the last 2,000 years, especially, and I'm referring sort of to the Christian religions, really, you know, that we were very connected with the harmony of the planet, to each other, to living in harmony with the animals, preparing for the seasons. You know, you can tell by watching where a beaver a family builds its dam, how high on the riverbank, what kind of winter is going to follow. And you can notice that in the spring, and you know in the winter that what kind of a winter we're going to have. You know, how do these animals know? Because they're connected with the natural rhythms of the planet. And that has been removed from us. And I think that's been our hidden history, again, forbidden knowledge. And so it's been replaced with this very materialistic, um, uh, really the other end of the spectrum when it comes to our natural rhythms and being in balance and harmony with the planet. It's become all about commercial things, altering our behaviors, grooming children, altering their behaviors, lot of alcohol abuse, a lot of food abuse. Now, I'm all for pigging out this time of year. Absolutely. But I'm super careful what I have in my festive foods available, to make sure everything is healing and sustaining, and you know, isn't going to make me sick in January and in a weakened state, which then sets you up for Valentine's Day and all the garbage that they are selling, chocolates and all of that. And then that bleeds into Easter and more junk. You know what I'm saying? And all of it is a perversion, I believe, of what's natural law, our natural way of being, and it's to make money. Basically, if they're not feeding off our luge, they're feeding off our finances. And you know, don't get me started on the medical industry, and I could go on and on. So I'll just zip it and end it there.
But I'm with you, Karen. No, because there's that thing that a lot of people say, and I do find it to be true, is that the reason why they promote a lot of this bad eating and a lot of this, you know, eating of sugar around the holiday times too, is for the reciprocation between the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. Everybody gets sick because they mess up their, you know, microbiomic environment eating all of the bad foods. And I'm not gonna lie, I like to pig out too around this time, and this is the time of year that, I do occasionally have a drink because it is the holidays, but it's all within moderation and on that understanding. But I'm with you. I do see that correlation because we know a lot of this stuff that is set up in our society always has some kind of business end or some money making end on the ass end of it. And so I'm with you on that. I think it's very possible that this could be a reciprocating door. Hey, let's get everybody to eat all of this nasty food, so everybody's going to go get their flu shot because they're afraid of getting sick, and everybody's going to go to the doctor, and we're going to make a lot of money. But one thing I want to bring up before we end the show, so there's a few unsuspecting holidays that have occult and pagan origins, but you never think, because you thought some of them were American-made holidays. But as we've talked about in this show, we can see that a lot of the fundamental basis and foundations of America itself is an occult origin story. So let's go ahead and bring up this little article. I like this site because it is the exact same thing as Chris's shirt. It's Stay Weird. Oh, that is not the one we're going on. Okay, there we go. So we have a little list of occult holidays that have pagan origins. So we talked about Christmas. A lot of us are very familiar with Easter and it being the day of Ishtar. We know Halloween and Samhain. And New Year's Eve actually also has its roots in paganism. But see, the original New Year's Eve, it looks like, was actually celebrated around the spring equinox. It was not celebrated at the 1st of January. And then we have Valentine's Day, which what Karen was just talking about. But we have the Saint Valentine or Valentinus. And actually, this has its roots in Lupercalia, which was celebrated in mid-February, and it involved fertility rites and the pairing of men and women through a lottery-like system, which is very interesting. We have Mardi Gras, which is actually very similar to Saturnalia. And then we got Midsummer, and I know Chris has seen Midsommar, the show. I'm sure there's some kind of weird correlation in this. But yes, even Groundhog Day has its pagan roots, I guess. But I just think we can sum this up by saying, one of the things we have to understand is there, for most certainly, is a deep hidden, as Karen put it, forbidden knowledge, deep history for the roots of origins where a lot of these holidays originated from. I feel that based on what I've heard from everybody here today, we need to get back to the real roots of this holiday, this festivity, bringing it back to the spiritual aspect of it, the connection with nature, the triumph over darkness. And, I think also, too, there is a certain magic about this time of the year, whether it be love, whether it be the human collective consciousness, and the power of intention and mass effect. All I do know is that we should have discernment and be careful with which aspects of these holidays we wish to celebrate, because we could be imbibing in some of the darker aspects of this. So I will sum it up with this before I hand it off to Karen. I think, we need to bring the spirit back in Christmas. Instead of it just being a Christmas spirit, we can have the spirit of Christmas. And we can get back to our roots with this and kind of recultivate and a renaissance of the winter solstice and bring it back to its original meaning. And I think that way we could potentially clean up some of the potential nasty egregores that have manifested from the materialist side of it. And that's just my 2 cents. Karen, what are your closing thoughts for today?
Well, I think, again, getting back to our natural rhythms, going to bed early, getting up late, feasting, enjoying, creating a very cozy environment around ourselves, loving up our pets and being kind to our family members, working on our character on the inside, instead of succumbing to greed and all that political stuff that goes on between family members at Christmas time. Just spend time with the people you love and who love you. love yourself, love your pets. I think this can be a wonderful introspection, a time for introspection, planning. What are we going to do with the birth of the sun? That as the days start getting longer, we're going to have a garden this year. What went well during the previous year? What didn't go very well? What changes could we make? Things we want to work on within our own character. It's a wonderful time of year. I just love it. I've never appreciated the winter the way I do now. And of course, I'm happy every day, but yeah, that's what I would say.
You're muted.
This is the second time. I guess it happens to the best of us. But no, I appreciate that, Karen. And I do think that we have to really bring back that tradition. We have to get back to these roots of Christmas. And I do think that, it is. It's about time of love and spending with family. And that's where we need to have our focus. So, Chris and Jen, what are your final thoughts for this?
I guess I would say, try to bring back the light in whatever way you can. When we do a beckoning tree, it helps to feed the animals, so we're connecting with them. And I think that the dark side of this time of year is definitely consumerism. We need to get back to making things for the people we love, putting our time and our energy into those gifts rather than going in debt and stress and add that to the sugar and end up very sick come January and February. I think it's more important that we bring the love, the family, the friends. We eat good food that's healthy for us and helps us get through the winter and keeps us from getting sick rather than makes us sick. But yeah, that's what I think. I agree with you, Stephen. We should definitely bring back the spiritualism and the connection of this time of year.
I agree. Although I've always enjoyed Christmas, always enjoyed being around my family, there were many years where I didn't celebrate it. It really didn't mean anything to me. But for the past few years, especially after having Jen come into my life, Christmas is something really special just because of the way that it feels now, the way that we celebrate it here, and the connection that we have with the people that we are near during Christmas. It's become a different kind of feeling. I used to grow up with the feeling of, being excited to get presents and being excited to watch my dad get drunk and make jokes and, my family being silly and things like that. But it's a different kind of excitement now. And I really welcome it. And I enjoy Christmas very much. And I wish you all a Merry Christmas. Hope you have a great holidays as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, that would be essentially, I agree with what Jen said. The dark side is the consumerism, the materialism, and the scaring your kids. Let's not lie to your kids anymore, scare your kids anymore. I think that would be the best idea. But nonetheless, guys,
Satan Claus.
Satan Claus or Saturn Claus, and then there's some people, I never threw this in there, that the whole Saturn death cult thing where they think Earth originally, back in, this ties into the Santa Claus myth too, but Earth originally in antiquity orbited Saturn, and then it was brought over here to where it is, and the god Saturn did that and all that. Just a little bit of weirdness to throw in at the end there. But before we hop off, I will have, when this airs, I will have your links, Karen. I will have your links, Chris, and Jen. I am actually going to throw a link down to your life coaching Facebook on here as well, so you can get some more people hitting you up for some healing. But if there's anywhere else anybody can find you, or you have any cool projects you're working on, Karen, I know you have a cool project you want to talk about, so let's get to it before we hop off tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, first of all, I want to say Jen and Chris and Stephen, always a pleasure to get together with you folks. I just love you all so much. You feel like my extended family. I want to say that besides, you can find me at Karen Holton TV on most platforms, but you can also visit my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton. And I have big news. I am in the process of having my book published. It should be available on Amazon by Monday, December 16th. And it's called Transdimensional: Meet the New Neighbors, based on my paranormal experiences and transdimensional travels. Thanks again, Stephen, for having me on.
Anytime, Karen, and ditto. You all are extended family, like for real. Like you guys, it's always cool to sit down with you all. So, Chris and Jen, got anything coming up that you would like to inform anybody about? I know Chris has been heavy editing his new documentary.
Yes, the documentary, I am hoping to have it wrapped up by the end of the month or shortly after. And that's exciting. We're going to hopefully have it submitted by January, take a couple of months to hit the platforms, but we will be letting you guys know the progress of that. Other than that, just check out Forbidden Knowledge News on all podcast platforms, our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. And we're on YouTube, Rumble, and you can get a Rockfin premium membership, rockfin.com/FKN plus, and watch our first movie, the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana, on Tubi. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Anytime.
All right.
No sweat, guys. Well, everybody, before we sign off here, I want to wish you all a very happy holiday, whichever holiday you decide to celebrate. You know, I'm just gonna have a happy old winter solstice time and imbibe in some of the Christmas aspects with the family. But guys, I am on my 2-week break. You are seeing this show pre-recorded. But you know, I will be back January 8th with Mr. Corey Hughes. He will be the first guest of season 3. So other than that, everybody, again, happy holiday. Enjoy your time with your family. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good night, everybody.